Two baby Bigfoots rescued the woman who shocked the woods. It was a night of endless rain. A middle-aged woman wandered through the forest, her cloak heavy with water, her eyes hollow with loss. She thought she had disappeared into silence forever until a cry broke through the storm. In a rocky corner, two small shapes trembled. Baby Bigfoots pressed against the stone, surrounded by hunters' torches. Their cries pierced the night raw with fear. Without thinking, she rushed forward, shielding them with her body. In her arms, the little ones clung to her, and she ran heart-pounding as the hunters roared behind her. Through mud and branches, she fought the storm. Firelight flickered closer, the hounds' growls closing in. At last, the trees opened, and she found herself at the edge of a cliff. Below, only darkness. Behind, footsteps thundered closer. She held the children tight, tears lost in the rain. And then, lightning split the sky. A towering shadow rose before her, the alpha Bigfoot. With a single mighty blow, he hurled a tree across the path. Hunters cried out in terror, scattering into the storm. In that moment, the forest spoke not with fear, but with mercy. But who was this woman, and what had driven her into the heart of the woods? What would you have done if you were in her place? Run, or protect them? Share your thoughts below. She was once a familiar face in the valley, tending her small farm on the edge of the plains. Neighbors remembered her laughter, her steady hands, and the warmth of her hearth. But life can be cruel. A sudden accident stole her husband, and whispers in the town twisted grief into shame. Misunderstandings grew like weeds, and soon she felt more a stranger among her own people than a friend. So she walked away. She left behind the house, the fields, and every trace of the life she had built. For months she wandered into the forest, hoping its silence would bury her sorrow. The trees became her shelter, the wind her only companion. She thought the world had forgotten her, and she tried to forget the world. But fate does not leave us hidden for long. On a storm-torn night, as rain hammered the leaves and thunder shook the earth, a sound reached her ears. Not the call of a wolf, nor the groan of a branch, but something different. A cry. Weak, frightened, desperate. She followed it. And that path would lead her into a story no one in the valley could ever imagine. Part 1. The Encounter. The rain had not stopped for hours. It fell in sheets, drumming against the forest floor, turning soil into rivers of mud. The woman pulled her cloak tighter around her shoulders, though it did little to keep the storm away. Her breath came in shallow bursts, each one visible in the cold night air. She was tired of walking, tired of carrying the weight of grief, tired of the silence she had chosen. And then she heard it. At first she thought it was only the wind, sharp, shrill, whistling through broken branches. But when she paused, the sound came again. A cry. Small, piercing, fragile. It was not an animal she recognized. It was not the low growl of a wolf, nor the sharp bark of a fox. This sound carried fear, the kind only the helpless make when danger is near. Her heart quickened. She hesitated, torn between stepping forward and turning back. Yet something deep within her, perhaps the remnants of the mother she once was, pushed her feet to move. She crept closer, following the cries. The underbrush thinned, opening into a rocky clearing lit by the orange glow of fire. She froze, eyes widening. There, pressed against the stone wall, were two small creatures, baby Bigfoots. Their fur was soaked, clinging to their trembling bodies. Their eyes, wide and glossy with terror, locked onto her as if pleading for help. Surrounding them, a circle of hunters advanced with torches in hand, their shadows looming large against the wet rocks. Dogs strained against their leashes, growling, eager to strike. The woman's breath caught. Every story she had heard about these creatures rushed back at once, tales of monsters, beasts of the woods, dangers to mankind. And yet, looking at them now, she saw nothing monstrous. She saw children, scared, cornered, alone. Her chest tightened, memories flooding her mind. Memories of nights when she had comforted her own child in storms of arms wrapped around small shoulders, of whispers meant to calm trembling hearts. That part of her had been buried with loss, but now it rose like fire. The hunters barked orders, raising their weapons. The dogs snapped their jaws inches from the little ones. Without realizing it, her body moved before her mind caught up. She stumbled out from the tree-line, rain pouring down her face, and placed herself between the children and the flames. "Stop," she cried, her voice breaking through the storm, the hunter's startled eyes narrowing at her sudden appearance. One of the men shouted, "Move aside. They're not yours to protect." But the woman's arms spread wide, shielding the little creatures. She didn't care about the hunter's anger, didn't care about the torches burning inches from her cloak. In that moment, something had awakened in her, a force stronger than fear, stronger than despair. The babies whimpered and pressed against her legs. She looked down, meeting their eyes. They were wet with tears, yes, tears just like a human child's. That was all she needed to see. With no plan, no thought of what would come next, she scooped them into her arms. Their weight nearly toppled her, but adrenaline kept her steady. Behind her, the hunters cursed, lunging forward, and then she ran. Through mud and rain, her boots slipped branches, lashed against her face. The cries of the hunters rang out furious and desperate, their torches bobbing in the darkness. The dogs barked wildly, straining to chase. The forest seemed to close around her, but she pressed on, clutching the trembling bodies to her chest. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. Every breath burned her lungs, and yet she would not let go. Not tonight. Not while she still had the strength to stand. She didn't know why she was doing this. She only knew one truth: those children would not die while she could still protect them. And in that terrifying rush through the storm, the woman who had once given up on life felt something stir again inside her chest. Not just fear, not just adrenaline. Hope. Part 2. The chase. The forest turned into a blur of shadows and rain. The woman stumbled forward, clutching the two small creatures as though they were her own children. Their fur was slick with water, their little arms locked tightly around her neck. Behind her, the voices of the hunters split the storm. Angry shouts, curses thrown into the night, the clatter of boots against rock. After her, "Don't let them get away," one cried. The dogs barked furiously, their growls echoing through the trees. Torches flared, swaying in the downpour, chasing her like fire-born spirits. Every step she took felt heavier than the last mud, sucking at her boots' roots, clawing at her ankles. But she did not stop. Her lungs burned, her vision blurred with rain and tears. Memories raced through her mind: the day she had walked away from her farm, the silence she had chosen, the grief that had swallowed her whole. She had thought she was done with living, done with caring, and yet here she was, running as though her very soul depended on it, carrying two beings no one else would save. The babies whimpered, their cries muffled against her shoulder. One of them reached out a tiny hand, clutching the fabric of her cloak. That touch lit a fire in her chest. It was fragile, desperate, but it was life, and she would not let life be taken tonight. Branches whipped across her face, leaving scratches that stung with rain. Her cloak tore on a jagged root. She nearly fell, but forced herself upright again. Behind her, the hunters grew closer. The crunch of boots, the furious commands, the gleam of torchlight growing brighter. Corner her, drive her to the cliff. The words froze her heart. They knew the land better than she did. They were hurting her, cutting off her escape. She pushed forward anyway, refusing to give them the satisfaction of surrender. The storm raged, louder thunder rolling like war drums overhead. The forest floor began to slope, rising toward the rocky ridges. She stumbled, slipped, caught herself with one hand before tumbling, then pressed on. Her body screamed in protest. Her arms ached from holding the children, her chest heaved for breath. Still she ran. And then her foot struck open ground. She burst from the tree line into a clearing. For one fleeting moment, relief washed over her, but then her eyes widened. Before her stretched nothing but empty space, a sheer drop vanishing into darkness, a cliff. Her body lurched to a halt, mud sliding beneath her boots. The babies clung tighter, sensing the fear that gripped her. She turned her head, breath shuddering. Behind her, the forest glowed with fire. The hunters emerged, spreading out, blocking every way back. The dogs snarled. The men raised their weapons. Their shadows stretched across the wet stone, long and menacing. The woman staggered backward, her heels slipping dangerously close to the edge. Pebbles crumbled and tumbled into the abyss, swallowed by the storm. She could hear the faint echo of their fall, endless and hollow. Her heart pounded against her ribs. She pressed the babies tighter to her chest, tears mingling with the rain on her cheeks. She whispered, voice trembling, "I'm so sorry. I tried." For an instant she thought it was the end. The storm had cornered her, the hunters had won, and the forest would become her grave. But then silence. The hunters froze, torches flickering. The dogs whimpered, shrinking back. A new sound rose above the storm, heavy, deliberate footsteps. The woman's breath caught. She turned her head slowly, and there, framed by a flash of lightning, a colossal shadow loomed at the edge of the trees. The Alpha Bigfoot. Part 3. The Rescue and Return. The lightning split the sky in two, and in that blinding white flash she saw him. A towering figure larger than any man, broader than any beast. The Alpha Bigfoot stepped out of the storm like a phantom of the woods, his fur drenched his breath, rising like mist in the rain. For a heartbeat, time stopped. The hunters froze mid-step, their torches flickering wildly. The dogs whimpered, tails sinking between their legs. Even the storm seemed to hush, as though the forest itself was holding its breath. Then, with a force that shook the earth, the creature moved. He gripped a fallen tree, thick as a man's body, and hurled it across the path. The trunk crashed with a thunderous crack, blocking the hunter's advance. Sparks of torchlight scattered, men shouting in panic. The dogs yelped, pulling back into the shadows. The woman stared, her chest heaving, her arms wrapped desperately around the trembling little ones. She expected rage. A beast's fury turned on all who stood before it. But when his eyes fell on her, there was no hatred, only something deeper, something ancient. The Alpha lowered his head, not as an enemy, but as a guardian. Her knees buckled. She collapsed onto the wet stone, clutching the baby's tears spilling freely down her face. She whispered, half to herself, half to him, "You saved us." The storm raged on, but the fear inside her broke like a dam. She had not been abandoned to the woods. She had been found. The Alpha stepped closer, slow, deliberate, as if not to frighten her further. One massive hand extended not in threat but in reassurance. The babies stirred no longer, crying, their small hands reaching back toward him. They knew him. They trusted him. The woman lifted her gaze. In those eyes, dark, glistening beneath the rain, she saw not a monster but a father, a protector. And then, without words, he guided her. With the babies nestled close, she rose and followed him through the forest. Step by step, deeper into the storm. He led them not into danger, but toward shelter, toward safety. An old cabin appeared through the veil of rain, its roof sagging, its windows broken. Yet inside, dry wood and a forgotten hearth still stood. The Alpha nudged the door open, then stepped aside. She entered, clutching the children, and lit what remained of the hearth. Soon the fire crackled to life, painting the walls in golden light. The babies curled beside her, their breaths soft, their tiny chests rising and falling in unison. She sat close, her hands trembling as she stroked their damp fur. For the first time in years, warmth spread through her, not just from the fire, but from within. She realized then that the forest was not only a place of loss, it was a place of mercy, a place where even the forgotten could find a reason to live again. As dawn broke, the storm cleared. Pale sunlight filtered through the broken shutters. She stepped outside, the two little ones still drowsy in her arms. The valley below glistened with rain, and there at the edge of the clearing she saw him once more. The Alpha stood silent, his massive frame outlined against the light. He gave no roar, no sound of farewell, only a slow nod before turning back into the trees. Her breath trembled. She knew what it meant. He had given her back more than her life. He had given her a choice. And when the rancher found her that morning standing by the cabin door, she no longer looked like the broken woman who had left. She looked like someone ready to begin again. She whispered to him softly but firmly, "It's time I go home." Even in the darkest storms, mercy can find us. Sometimes in saving others, we discover the strength to save ourselves. What would you have done in her place? Run or protect? Share your thoughts below and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of the Bigfoot story.